This is continuing November 9th.
You have read in all of the writings that your safety and your security is in God, not in any piece of matter, whether it's a piece of machinery or a piece of currency or a piece of real estate or a piece of security in the vault. Your safety, your security, your abundance, your health, your harmony are not in these, but that they are in God. And of course you've agreed that this is so. But now I have to emphasize that this is only another statement of truth, except in the degree that you have a clear, specific realization on the point. Just as I've told you about my experience of supply, that it was only when I came to the realization that I is God and already embodies my supply, therefore I need not look to man for it, nor to circumstance or condition or anything or any place outside myself. Even after that realization, you will remember that the visible evidence of supply came slowly, and it increased gradually, and you may say that it was quite a while before the permanent demonstration of abundance or complete sufficiency was manifested. So now, the point that I'm making is this. Unless you have a definite and specific realization on every point covered by the infinite way in its teaching of spiritual living and spiritual healing, that on those points in which you do not have realization, you can hardly expect demonstration. So it is that I'm going to stress for you that you take me more seriously with such pages as 94 to 103 in the Infinite Way, on waking in the morning and so forth, or these specific principles covered in the June through October 1957 letters, and the protective work which starts on page 39 of the Infinite Way letters 1955. I remind you that we are engaged in a definite practice, specific practice, and that practice, if left in the realm of mind, does not result in demonstration. It is only when there is an inner click or realization that truth becomes demonstrable. If it weren't for this, do you not see that with, much more than 250,000 copies of Infinite Way writings that are in the world, that we would be having such healings and such successes as would shock the world? Let us remember this, that your individual demonstration does not depend entirely on the fact that the Infinite Way message is truth, but on the degree of your realization of each specific point. And this is true in healing work. It may be necessary that you have a positive, definite click or realization with every case that comes to you, until such time as you are so deeply immersed in the Spirit that you may be able to have these realizations only 3 or 4 or 5 times in a day. But going back in my memory to the early years of the practice, I can tell you that it not only took specific realization with each case, but oh, how many cases I had that took weeks and months with specific realizations every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. The reason for emphasizing this is that the Infinite Way has really brought truth to such a clear presentation that just the writings I've mentioned in this talk would be enough for you with your background of the other writings to really demonstrate a tremendous spiritual consciousness. And yet I have to say frankly that not all the writings put together will do that, except in proportion to your individual application and realization. Now you will take up our advertising gadget and the claim of cataracts and the claim of cancer, and you will see what unfoldment you have on each of these separately. Do not try to handle these all in one. Take them one by one and see what response is brought out in you. Then wait for the click that tells you that there is a spiritual response. And of course, don't forget to let me hear from you every once in a while with what unfoldment is taking place within you. In our meditation just now, my mind went to each one of these claims to which we are giving specific attention. And in each case, the answer was the same, that these are man-created things, man-created beliefs, mind-created. And therefore not true creations. We must observe what this particular facet of truth brings forth in our individual healing work, for that is the way we can gauge results. As individual claims come to you, consciously remember this point, that the claim being brought to you is man-created, mind-created, the mind of man, not the mind of God, not the creative principle which is God, but the mind of man, the full sense of creation, and observe the effect of that in your work. Before that, in a meditation, more than a dozen times it repeated itself within me that my glory give I not to another. And here too it seemed to me that it was saying that God's qualities are never given to a creation other than God's. And of course, the only other creation there is that which human sense or hypnotism creates. And therefore, God's glory, God's power, God's presence, God's substance, God's eternality and immortality are not given to mortal creations. Please ponder this idea until it clarifies itself within you, for I am seeing at this moment clearly that God's glory, God's qualities, God's activities, God's laws are not inherent in any false sense of creation, or that which we call the Adam dream, second chapter of Genesis, mortal creation. My glory give I not to another. God's power is not in hypnotism. God's power is not in material effect. My glory give I not to another. My law is not in any mortal concept. Therefore, no earthly creation, mortal creation, mental creation, has the law of immortality, the law of eternality, the law of continuity. No material creation has the law to sustain it, my law, my glory, my reality. Hypnotism, then, is not a power because it has not my glory. Propaganda has no power of continuity, of cause, of action. Belief, whether of climate, weather, food, medical or physical theory, none of these has my glory or my law to sustain them, to perpetuate them, to continue them. Here again we see they have only the arm of flesh, nothingness. See the nature of every claim that's presented to you, and whether it claims to have power, presence, substance, law, or life, and then apply to it, my glory give I not to another. These are only the arm of flesh, self-destructive, self-annihilating. See how all of this gets back again to the nature of error, knowing the nature of error. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. See how all of this proves the message of the infinite way, that it is not going to God for a special blessing or the setting aside of anything, but a task of the individual to know the truth. And the truth of the nature of God is not the full truth until it likewise reveals the nothingness of that which is appearing as a mortal universe or a material concept of universe. And until we know that no concept, whether as thought or thing, has the glory of God to sustain it, the life or law or substance of God to sustain it, we are not in the fullness of Christ's realization. Okay. Now the declaration of this, or the intellectual knowing of this, is the first step but it must be continued until it becomes spiritual discernment or inner realization. This is November 11th, and we have Daisy, Floyd, Emma, and myself. And in these past few days, that which has come to light must make it clear that we are in a world that is just full of all kinds of error. Not merely the forms of error, sin, disease, death, accident, war, greed, lust, animality, but more particularly, there is a reason why these are in the world, and that they abound in the world, and that they seem to predominate this entire universe from end to end. The basic reason, as we have seen, is that in the experience called the fall of man, what actually took place was the development of material sense or personal sense. That which, first of all, made us live as to ourselves and developed within us this sense of, first of all, living for ourselves, then secondarily for our family and our community, and finally our race or our nation or our church. Now remember that you would find not one single trace of any of these in spiritual consciousness, because there has never lived a person spiritually endowed who was not thinking in terms of the world's goods or good, who was not thinking in terms of the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God, because all we have to do is to look at the sacred literature of the world and see how predominantly this is devoted to the over and over again declaration of the fatherhood of God or oneness of God or all power of God. And then secondly, to the brotherhood of man, accepting all men as neighbors, love thy neighbor as thyself, and call no man on earth your father, and all manner of such things is written in the sacred writings of the world, indicating that there is neither Greek nor Jew, bond nor free, that in the spiritually endowed consciousness we may call nothing evil or bad that God hath created. And so you see that it is only that in the development of material sense, personal sense, that the evils of this world are produced, and they appear outwardly as sins, diseases, wars, lacks, and limitations. Now, all the way back 75 years, it has been proven that when one person of discernment, spiritual discernment, knew the truth, that they could break that mesmerism for another, that they could break whatever the supposed power of disease was, or the supposed power of sin, or the supposed power of lack and limitation, and they could break it for another. And so the metaphysical world soon had thousands of individuals with enough vision as to call themselves, or to be called, practitioners. And then tens of thousands of those who were called patients. And probably in every single case, or in the lives of all of these individuals, let's put it that way, every one of these practitioners has broken the spell of sin or disease or death or lack for some of their patients, if not all or nearly all, or perhaps for all of their patients in some degree. Now just think of what this means. All the time this was happening, the non-metaphysicians were not affected. Only the metaphysicians who would specifically say, will you help me, or will you heal me, or will you give me help, received it. And in some measure, probably every one of them received some help. There's probably nobody that was ever in the metaphysical world that didn't receive some measure of help sometime. And perhaps those who had the most spiritually endowed practitioners had the best help, or perhaps those who were more earnestly studying themselves and developing their own spiritual consciousness had the most help. But the point that I'm making is this, that regardless of what you behold in this world today of sin, disease, death, lack, and limitation, you have 75 years of evidence that one spiritually endowed person can break whatever the power is, or supposed power, or operating power, that produces sin, disease, death, lack, and limitation. And so we come to this wonderful conclusion that if we are suffering now, or any of our students or patients are suffering from the sins, diseases, deaths, lacks, limitations of this world, it is partly because we as practitioners have not risen high enough to release them from this power, but we know now that it can be done, or that they themselves are not cooperating sufficiently in the sense of yielding themselves to it. In other words, a person can't just go on living their ordinary selfish human existence and expect spiritual power to add a lot of glory to them while they give up none of the evil that produced it. So there is a responsibility on both sides. Now, will you see with me the significance of this? There is a way to break the mesmerism that binds mankind to sin, disease, death, lack, and limitation. And we know the way in which that can be done, and in some measure we have proven that it can be done. And one of the ways is that those wanting help must seek it, ask for it, desire it, and at the same time work to overcome in themselves the material states of consciousness that produced it. While the practitioner must live closer and closer and closer to the spiritual realm, so as to have the necessary discernment to break the mesmerism which appears outwardly in these forms of error. Now, that brings us to the nature of the work that we are doing. Here we are, 7 of us, accepting the responsibility to experiment further with spiritual truth as it has been revealed to us, not only in carrying into deeper and finer experiences of healing, but also for trying to break this mesmerism for the world. And so it would seem to me that we seven owe it to ourselves to be sure that we open our consciousness to the healing grace of each other, and that we accept the responsibility for holding our seven in this healing consciousness, so that we may at least show forth the highest measure of that which we are attempting to bring forth for the world. In a measure, we are doing that in the work of these groups around the clock. Each individual of such groups is doing daily specific work for infinite way activity, infinite way supply, infinite way students, infinite way patients, and evidently bringing forth great fruitage from it. So I want to make this suggestion today, that we start a program like this. Supposing we who are here in this room today start this today, and you at home, when you listen to this tape, use that day as starting. And supposing we take Floyd today, and each of us devote one of our meditation periods as if Floyd were a patient who had asked for help. And take him, as we would ourselves or a member of our family, into meditation, realizing the grace which operates as his experience, physically, mentally, morally, financially, family-wise, community-wise. In other words, taking up specific work for every detail of his so-called human life and bringing it into spiritual awareness, the same as we really should be doing for ourselves. Now, if we do that for him today, and then tomorrow we can take Daisy, and then the next day we can take Emma, and the next day Lorraine, and the next day Eileen, and the next day Olney, and the next day me, and then begin all over again. And so each day, the seven of us will be taking one of us into full and complete treatment, realization, call it whatever you will, as if they were our patient for that day, and their whole experience was, so as to bring to light the full harmony of their being. Now, of course, that's what you're supposed to do when a patient calls on you for help. You can't treat them only for a fever. You can't treat them for corns or bunions. What you're supposed to do is to take them into, not take them, but once they've asked for help, turn to your spiritual realization, which embraces their entire spiritual life, individually manifested here on earth. And it should really embrace every phase of their being. Now, it should take us between 9 months and a year to have this so clearly defined within ourselves as to the how of doing this, and as to what is embraced in such a treatment, as to, because after all, none of us knows. Each one has to go to God to find out what this treatment should be and what it should embrace and what it should include, and maybe each time might be something of entirely different nature. because it would be protective as well as healing. It would be opening opportunities. It would be changing, you may say, a person's existence. And by that time, we should know so thoroughly how to do this that we could, and maybe less than that, we could begin to take each of our groups, Los Angeles group, Chicago group, New York group, London group, so forth and so on around the globe, and see what opens to us in this, because we do know that there's a mesmerism operating that makes us human beings with sin, disease, and death in our experience. We do know that a specific realization of truth breaks that mesmerism. See that? Now, in the old days, you could go to a practitioner, thousands and thousands of people did it, and give them $30 a month. And that practitioner was committed. I know one man, one of my friends, who 20 years gave one practitioner $30 a month. And to do specific daily work for him. And even though I don't have too much regard for that particular practitioner's awareness, I must say this, that that man went through those 20 years with far greater harmony and peace than the average person could testify to, and with far greater prosperity and with less human ability to account for it. See? It had power in his experience. And I know many, many others who did the same thing. Now, it doesn't mean that you can buy truth or that you can buy health. It doesn't quite mean that. But it does mean this. We do know that there is a mesmerism that's causing our discords and inharmonies. And we do know that the specific application of whatever amount of spiritual understanding we have breaks it. And so I think that, as probably the master must have worked for his disciples, and then probably taught the disciples to work for each other, because he even said, ask them to work with him in Gethsemane. So he must have been in the habit of asking them to pray for him, and of him praying for them. So I can see that there isn't any reason why we, who are attempting to break the mesmerism for the entire world, shouldn't need every bit of support we can get from each other. Because in the proportion that we are freed from it, we can free others. If I be lifted up, shall draw others unto me. And I think the first thing we have is an obligation to each other. Right? Then, to use whatever degree of freedom we have for this work that we're doing, which embraces everybody in the infinite way, and ultimately through that, this entire universe, because we are working on things that are not only beneficial to those who are students of the infinite way, but to those who are out in the entire world. Now, so I think I'm going to ask that we start that program today, and we'll take them in that order. We'll take Floyd and Daisy, Emma, Lorraine, Eileen, Olney, Joel, And then as we finish, then we start over again in that same routine, and if there's anything to be added as we go along, we'll learn it through this work, and we'll see where that leads us. After all, part of this work is experimental, right? And through this we learn what can be done and what can't be done, and if there's any error in this way of working, we'll learn it. The theme of my work for Floyd just now was that it is, or rather, the reason for our sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, and whatnot is mesmerism operating as human consciousness, and that the remedy is dissolving this human consciousness of mesmerism through our understanding and realization of its nature, that is, having no God qualities, glories, activities, or law. Now, for me, there must be a continuity of this type of activity until it is further defined and naturally further manifested. Anything you want to add? Daisy, anything you want to add? November 12th. I would like to clarify something for you which is not to be found in any of the literature of the world, at least not any that has come to my attention. And one day it will play a very important part, first in the demonstration of the infinite way, and then later in its effect upon the world. You might call this an explanation of the revelations that have taken place the last 18 months concerning the first and second chapters of Genesis. To start, I will ask you to look at this world as you see it as an atlas, a round globe. And whereas the atlas in your room, I'm speaking now of a round atlas such as is usually mounted on a stand. This atlas rests in the air. It is completely surrounded by air. And we are told that our world is exactly that round ball moving in the atmosphere of the air. And it is some activity that keeps the world revolving in the air. And so looking at this ball, which is the earth, just imagine now that you are seeing the air currents flowing around this world, and in which this world is bedded. Now actually, our world, your world and mine, is the same round ball which you look out upon from your eyes. The only thing is this, that our world is not resting in the air. It's resting in an element that we call mind. And it is not something solid like earth resting in something unsolid like air, but rather our world is this world of mind externalized as form, but still consisting of the elements and qualities of mind. Now this is the human universe, or the second chapter of Genesis. And in this universe, mind controls form. Just as mind evolves as form, so mind governs and controls form. We read nowadays in physical science that matter is indestructible, that it was never created and can never be destroyed, but that matter changes form so that a solid may become a liquid may become a vapor. One form of matter may be transformed into another form, but always it is indestructible as matter. Now we would go a step further and say that mind is the indestructible element which appears as matter or is formed as matter, and that mind can be formed as the matter we call a fleshly body, or the matter that is vegetable, animal, mineral, but that actually its substance and base, its foundation, and its governing law and energy and activity is mind. Mind appearing as form. Now it is for this reason that mental science, if properly conducted, can be successful. In other words, if you were to engage in the healing of disease by purely mental means, and would sit down consciously, knowing the truth about any and every situation or condition that was presented to you, or if you took a case and decided that you would give it 3 treatments a day, 5 if necessary, 10 sometimes, and that you would keep up a steady run of 15, 20, 30-minute treatments, and that these treatments would embrace every facet of truth you knew, you would find out how quickly you would heal all manner of disease. This would result in no spiritual regeneration. It would not change them any more than a medical healing would change them, and make them just as susceptible to disease or sin the next day or week. But it would result in healing, and the reason is that mind is not only the substance of matter, but the law and energy of matter, and governs it and controls it. Now it is for this reason that it is said that thoughts are things. It is for this reason that you can make up your mind to exercise your body. And if you let your mind have complete dominion and make your body obey your mind for 30, 60, 90 days, you can harden your muscles or reduce the size of your body or improve its functions in some way or other, the mind controlling matter or form. It is in the same way that hypnosis
is produced. It is the same way that hypnosis cures some forms of disease. It is not a matter of mind over matter. It is a matter of mind is matter. And mind is the law and the energy unto matter. In the March 1956 class, I told of a minister who was performing an experiment which he thought was a spiritual one. He was growing flowers, and in one room he had plants with people knowing good thoughts about them. And in another room he had plants with people speaking negative thoughts to them. And in the one room where good thoughts were going on, the plants grew 6 inches taller than their average normalcy. But in the room where the negative thoughts were going on, the plants withered, or shriveled, or became dwarfed. This is not mind over matter. This is mind appearing as matter. This is good thoughts appearing good, evil thoughts appearing evil. Thoughts are things. And so it is that you have the Ten Commandments, in which, if you accept these Ten Commandments and mentally strive to obey them, and they're mostly in the realm of mind actions, the acknowledging of the one God, and the refraining from indulgences, stealing, adultery, envy, jealousy, and so forth. By the control of your mind, you control the actions of your body. So it is that your body, you have proven, can do nothing of itself. You can't have a moral body or an immoral body. It is the mind that governs the actions of the body. And if your body is being immoral, it is not the body being immoral, but the body acting upon the mental state of your morals. In the same way, your hands can't steal, but if you have a negative state of thought on the subject of integrity, that becomes manifest as fingers that steal. Now, this I give to you as the human world, as it is. And I give you this as an explanation of why it is that in such periods as, we will say, the American Revolution period, when there were men imbued with the idea of freedom, the idea of integrity, the idea of democracy, that we had created for us as fine a form of human government as there is on earth. And enough intelligence and enough love to surround this new creation, this new world, with good laws, a good constitution, a very right and fine form of government. And in the same way that men later struggled to maintain the integrity of this government, the unity of this government, even though they resorted to war for that purpose, nevertheless, behind it was the determination to stand for and maintain unity. And so, a United States of America covering the entire continent was assured. So it is that in periods when the men of evil mind get supreme, that we find the government degrading and the negative qualities of thought becoming manifest as negative qualities of life. Oh, I just give you one instance of that. In the time when it was said authoritatively that 40% of our people were undernourished. And yet at that same time, the oversupply of food on this continent was so great that they were destroying it. Now, there you have a condition of malnutrition, undernourishment, in the midst of an absolute physical abundance, showing that even the physical abundance couldn't overcome malnutrition as long as there was an evil intent behind it. The evil intent of mind became the evil condition of matter. Now, follow this yourself until you see how clear it is that if you live in a community with an element, let us say, of good men and women in office, that you have that condition of harmonious living in your community. We have a condition here in Hawaii that might illustrate that, in that we have and have had for a long, long time a group of women determined to preserve the beauty of even the cities of Hawaii. And because these women have these ideals of beauty, we have a city here with more flowers and trees on the streets than would normally be the case. And we have an island without signposts, fences, billboards, and even the advertising signs of the business firms in town have to be kept within some measure of what we would call beauty. Now here is the beauty of soul of this group of women, which is certainly an intangible quality, appearing outwardly as beauty in a city. Physical beauty. Manifest physical beauty. And so you see that it is really our mind actions that appear as form. And as we have mental ideas of beauty, we have cities of beauty, or bodies of beauty, homes of beauty, but certainly not without first having mental concepts, mental ideals, mental desires. These always become externalized in that form. The untidy mind, the careless mind, has an untidy home or an untidy community. Now up to this point, do you see that there is no God in this world? There is just man, the mind of man, appearing as the universe of man. And whatever his qualities, so is his universe. Now, we come to the period of Jesus Christ. We could go before that, but it is simpler for my purpose to start with Jesus Christ and to show you that over and above the Ten Commandments there is something greater. For ye have heard it said of old that if you were mentally pure, you would be physically pure. But I say you have to go a step further. And you will eventually come to see that the Master's secret was this. He was telling of a transcendental presence or power which he called the Father within. Now remember that up to this time, the Hebrew world has not heard that expression, the Father within you or the Father within me. It has never heard that I have a meat the world knows not of. It has not yet been told that there is an invisible bread, an invisible wellspring of water. It has not yet been told that he that is within me is greater than he that is in the world. Oh, I said that I could go back before that to a few of the great Hebrew mystics who knew that there was a he that performeth that which is given me to do. But as a teaching or as a way of life, there is as yet no teaching such as the Master gave, that my kingdom is not of this world, not the world of right thinking or wrong thinking, not the world of being morally good or morally bad, not the world of being honest or dishonest. My kingdom is a kingdom of God which is found within you, and it operates itself. You need not resist evil, for the Father within me, he doeth the works. You need not take thought what you shall eat, what you shall drink. There is this transcendental presence or power which is providing these things for you. You need only accept them while abiding in this realization. The Master goes beyond this world. In fact, he says, I have overcome this world. He goes beyond the world of mind and form into a pure essence which produces for him a new world. A world of harmony, a world of peace. Not the peace of this world, remember. Not just the peace that you get from being moral or honest. Not just the peace that you get from being well-to-do. Not the peace that you get because the police aren't after you. But this is different. This is called my peace. And my peace is one that gives you something that the peace of the world does not give you. Here again we have a transcendental, something called a kingdom or realm of God, something beyond the mind. Yet, as we have discovered, when we reach this realm beyond the mind, beyond things and thoughts, we enter a domain where we find that this invisible spirit, presence, power, acts through our mind and body. Or you might say acts through our mind upon this whole universe, not only our body, but the body of the universe, trees, animals, vegetables, minerals. And it transforms the desert into a bed of roses. It transforms the sinner into purity. It turns dross into gold. It makes the crooked place a straight. Whereas before I was blind, now I see. The impotent man leaped to his feet and danced, jumped, ran, all by the introduction or contact with that which lies beyond mind. The first chapter of Genesis shows this Spirit or God appearing as form. It appears as Adam, and it appears as Eve, and it appears as the sun and the moon, and the earth, and the waters, and the crops in the ground. But it does all this without mechanical process or mental process. So it is that touching the realm of consciousness, pure consciousness, the realm which is above and beyond thoughts, we open ourselves to an atmosphere of spirit, a realm of God, a kingdom of God, and that spirit, in secrecy and in silence, transforms our universe. It acts upon our minds and upon our bodies. It acts upon our crops, upon our pets, our animals. It acts upon the nature of mankind, making him more nearly the man of brotherly love. And this is our lesson today.